Good morning. Happy Wednesday. When I was a little kid, and not like that little, in like middle school, Wednesday was my favorite day of the week because it was the day I had horseback riding lessons, and it's remained my favorite day of the week, I guess because of that association. I don't really like the idea of like leap day, like halfway through doesn't really appeal to me, so I'm assuming it's just because of the horses, but every week I get to Wednesday and I'm like, ooh, Wednesday. So Wednesday, and this is a fantastic chunk to read on a Wednesday or any day. I'm falling back in love with Hebrews as I read this. Some of my favorite Bible verses, like that have been for a long time, are from Hebrews, and yet when I'm thinking about the books that I go back to read, you know, just on my own and for fun, and when I want to read a big chunk, it's not usually Hebrews, and I think that's going to change after this. So this is, I loved the way that these readings are chosen. So if you looked at the thing we have today, Hebrews, the rest of the second chapter of Hebrews, so 10 through 18, and then also Hebrews 3, 1 through 6. I mean, obviously the chapters and verses are just, you know, inserted there by us later, so it's not like this isn't an intuitive way to put it together. But it's cool to me that we're reading it this way and not just Hebrews 2, Hebrews 3. And I think that these kind of notes here by the author flow really well into each other, and are really cool following up what we've talked about the past couple days. So let's go ahead and read. This is Hebrews 2, 10 through 18, and 3, 1 through 6. I'm not going to tell you the chapters, so I'm just going to read it. All right, Hebrews 2. For it was fitting that he, for whom and through whom all things exist, in bringing many children to glory, should make the leader to their salvation perfect through suffering. He who consecrates and those who are being consecrated all have one origin. Therefore, he is not ashamed to call them brothers, saying, I will proclaim your name to my brothers. In the midst of the assembly, I will praise you. And again, I will put my trust in him. And again, behold, I and the children God has given me. Now, since the children share in blood and flesh, he likewise shared in them, that through death he might destroy the one who has the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who through fear of death had been subject to slavery all their life. Surely he did not help angels, but rather the descendants of Abraham. Therefore, he had to become like his brothers in every way, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest before God to expiate the sins of the people. Because he himself was tested through what he suffered, he is able to help those who are being tested. Jesus, superior to Moses. Therefore, holy brothers, sharing in a heavenly calling to reflect on Jesus, the apostle and high priest of our confession, who was faithful to the one who appointed him, just as Moses was faithful in all his house. But he is worthy of more glory than Moses, as the founder of a house has more honor than the house itself. Every house is founded by someone, but the founder of all is God. Moses was faithful in all his house as a servant to testify to what would be spoken, but Christ was faithful as a son placed over his house. We are his house, if only we hold fast to our confidence and pride in his hope. So what a cool thing it is to read those all together. I read the title in there weirdly. I'm so sorry. It's a subtitle, it's confusing. How cool it is to read this all together. So this is so neat that it comes from, so for chapter 1 was about Christ's holiness, right? So much holier than the angels. The first part of chapter 2 was talking about how he had to be lowered in order to be our savior. And this chapter is about, the end of this chapter is all about him becoming just like us, and not even that, becoming one of us. And if you don't do anything else with this reading, I would encourage you, I hope that you will just sit with and just close your eyes and pray a little bit over the idea of Christ being one of us. Because we talk about that, you know, we accept and we appreciate that Christ is fully God and fully man, and yet I think we don't. I think I can just remember a few different times, different moments in my life when I really just was kind of washed over with the idea that Christ is literally one of us in a body with all the same struggles and all the same temptations, and united to us in that way even before we received his body and his blood, right? All of a sudden, Christ, being of the same stuff as God and the Spirit, is also of the same stuff as human flesh and blood people. One of the times that I remembered this was this past just Easter, a couple weeks ago. We watched the Jesus, the Sight and Sound Theater's Jesus. They streamed it. It's this amazing theater production with just really high performance quality and tricks and stuff. And it was mostly just taken from the Gospels, the dialogue. But what struck me was how human it was suddenly for me to see Jesus acted out by an actor and hugging people and getting hungry and sleeping, and it wasn't a perfect play by any stretch, but something about that I just realized he lived in a town and he had places that he liked to go, and I'm not I'm saying these like he's dead or something, which he's not, but he had those experiences too. And I think what this reading is kind of hoping to impress upon us is that in so much as you and Christ are radically and completely different, you are radically and completely the same. For the time that he was here, and he remains so, right, to minister to us, his children. It's emphasizing their ones being taught, but also I think of the same family, coming from and getting themselves from. And then at the same time, it uses that to talk about suffering and how we suffer just like we do. And then at the same time, we get to chapter 3, and Christ is head over all of this. He made all of this. As much as we are like Christ, he is always going to be so much more glorious. We can't be anything like Christ. We can't even imagine what it is like to be that glorious and to have that much power. And he's faithful and he's merciful, and those are emphasized here. His faithfulness and his mercy. He's worthy of everything, so much more than Moses. The reading, the devotion on the website specifically mentions, and there are good other readings to read too if you read through the part of Genesis and Acts, but it's talking about our tendency as humans to glorify the house over the builder, which is kind of what this first part of chapter 3 is warning us against. So as much as Christ is like us, Christ is also so much more glorious, and it's those things together which make him worthy of our faith and our trust and our hope, and able to be our salvation. So I hope you really enjoy this reading.